Have you ever met someone who was absolutely sure of something they were completely wrong about? Not kinda wrong, not slightly off, spectacularly wrong. And the more they talked, the more confident they became. You sat there thinking, how do they not know what they don't know? That's not arrogance. That's a cognitive blind spot. And it has a name. The Dunning-Kruger Effect is one of the most studied biases in psychology. It describes a specific pattern. People with low ability at a task overestimate their ability. They don't know they're bad, because being bad at something also means being bad at recognizing what good looks like. The same knowledge you need to do something well is the knowledge you need to evaluate your performance accurately. So if you don't have the first, you can't do the second. Think about the workplace. Have you ever had a colleague who was absolutely sure they were the smartest person in the room, but everyone else could see they were struggling? They'd speak over people, dismiss feedback, and take credit for things they barely contributed to. And the hardest part was that they genuinely believed they were exceptional. They weren't lying. They just couldn't see what everyone else could. The solution is not to tell them they're wrong. That backfires. Instead, ask them to explain their reasoning step by step. When someone with low competence has to walk through their logic out loud, gaps appear that even they can recognize. The goal isn't to humiliate, it's to create a moment where they see the gap for themselves. Consider the college student who aced high school without studying, then walked into university and bombed their first exam. They were convinced they knew the material. They felt prepared. And then the grade came back and they were genuinely shocked. They weren't lazy. They had never calibrated their ability against a real standard. High school rewarded their natural intelligence. University rewarded their preparation. And they didn't know the difference until the numbers stared back at them. The solution here is low-stakes testing. Before any important evaluation, test yourself under realistic conditions. The shock of a bad grade shouldn't be the first time you discover you're not as prepared as you thought. Calibrate early, fail small, adjust fast. Now here's the part nobody talks about. The Dunning-Kruger effect doesn't just apply to incompetent people. It also applies to highly competent people, just in the opposite direction. Experts consistently underestimate their own ability. They assume that if something is easy for them, it must be easy for everyone. So they rate themselves as average when they're actually exceptional. Think about the talented designer who constantly second-guesses their work. They look at what they created and see flaws that nobody else notices. They assume their colleagues would have done the same thing. So they never speak up, never ask for the promotion, never put themselves forward. They suffer from the opposite problem. They don't know how good they actually are. The solution here is external data. Keep a record of compliments, results, and achievements. When your internal gauge tells you that you're average, look at the external evidence. The gap between what you think and what the world tells you is real data. Trust the data over the feeling. This effect shows up everywhere. Online comment sections are a perfect example. The loudest, most confident opinions often come from people with the least expertise. Someone reads one article, and suddenly they're ready to debate a specialist who's studied the topic for a decade. And the specialist hesitates, qualifies their statements, acknowledges complexity. The novice doesn't, because the novice doesn't know enough to recognize what they're missing. The solution for the rest of us is a simple mental rule. Confidence is not a signal of accuracy. Just because someone sounds sure doesn't mean they're right. In fact, the more absolute and unhesitating the claim, the more cautiously you should evaluate it. Real expertise tends to come with nuance. Real knowledge comes with an awareness of what you don't know. The psychologist David Dunning put it this way. The first rule of the Dunning-Kruger effect is that the skills you need to produce a right answer are exactly the skills you need to recognize what a right answer is. It's a trap built into the architecture of learning. You can't know what you don't know until you learn enough to see it. So where does that leave us? 2 takeaways. First, if you've ever felt like an imposter, like you don't belong, like everyone else knows more than you, that might actually be a sign of competence. The fact that you can see what you don't know means you know more than you think. Second, if you meet someone whose confidence never wavers, whose certainty is absolute, whose answers come too quickly, pause. They may be standing on the peak of Mount Stupid, the highest point on the Dunning-Kruger curve, where ignorance meets absolute conviction. The goal is to live in the valley, the place where you know enough to recognize what you still have to learn. Where confidence is quiet, questions are frequent, and growth never stops. because the people who know the most are usually the ones who know how much they don't know. If this shifted something in how you see yourself or the people around you, subscribe for more psychology that helps you understand the mind.